right, thank you, Sylvia. So now we're going to move into talking about some of the highlights of the revisions. So without going through each standard, I'm going to talk about the focus and the intent of each section of the standards. As an overview, some features are important to note. The one, in reiterating what Sylvia just shared, it's paramount that you're paying attention to the standards and the policies that go with the standards. Those are really important because the board is reviewing anything submitted, whether it be a monitoring report or a self-study, through both lenses, the standards and the policies. It's also extremely important that you consistently refer to the glossary and understand the constructs and how CACREP interprets and applies those constructs in its reviews of the reports. So there's three elements you really want to be mindful of when you're working on any reporting or self-study, and that's the standards, of course, the policies, and the glossary for the 2024 standards. There may be times where the language appears somewhat vague in a standard. This is intentional to offer the program the flexibility of how they might meet the standard. So this is when I take us back to our vision, mission, and core values. This is where we want programs to be innovative and creative in ways to meeting the standard, which is why the language is intentionally vague. There are other times when standards are more clearly directive, and that's when we have an expectation, or the profession has given us an expectation to follow through with. You'll also see some new glossary terms. Program delivery types is a new glossary term. This is going to refer to programs that are delivered in person in physical spaces, also by distance as well, which could be both synchronous and asynchronous, or a combination of both. So that's a new glossary term. Across service delivery modalities, this is inclusive of both in-person and on-site services that are provided, and also through mental health platforms. A fourth item or term that you'll see is the word thresholds. This refers to programs setting benchmarks and using these to assess achievement and using the outcomes for continuous improvement. This closes the gap or the loop which programs have not been required to do in the past. And then you'll see the language of culturally sustaining and responsive in the glossary. And this is related to practices that preserve, support, and affirm a person's cultural identities. Standards were written with the intent to promote a unified professional counselor identity. The requirements are meant to ensure that students graduate with a strong professional counselor identity and with the opportunities for specializations in identified practice areas. The standards require that graduates demonstrate both knowledge and skills across the curriculum, as well as professional dispositions, first with respect to the universal counselor functions, and secondly, with respect to their specialized practice areas. So those are some overarching concepts that really are infused throughout all of the standards. So moving into Section 1. So Section 1 of the 2024 standards is similar to Section 1 of the 2016 standards, just to give a comparison. This section addresses the necessary institutional and program resources and structures to administer and deliver the program, such as administrative and financial supports for quality effectiveness and continuity of programs, elements around technology and physical facilities infrastructure that supports teaching and learning, and sufficiency and qualifications of faculty. It addresses the need for programs to be transparent with both students and faculty about requirements to be successful in the program so that an informed decision can be made. For students specifically, this section is helping students know who is teaching in the program, who's making the decisions for the program, what's expected of them for entry and progress through the program. For faculty, this section provides information of what is expected of them by the institution. A key element within Section 1 is our professional counselor identity. The focus is fostering in students by faculty who hold a professional counselor identity. Students must engage in professional activities in the counseling profession. Faculty must identify as a professional counselor through their earned degrees, credentials, and professional memberships, through their engagement in the counseling profession by their scholarly and service activities. This section also is now inclusive of our rehab counseling specialization. With the merger of CORE and CACREP in the past, these standards are the first standards that have been able to integrate all of our specialty areas in our community. So that's an overview of Section 1. Section 2 is, if we're looking at the 2016 standards, is what Section 4 once was on some level. This section is focused on quality that is aligned with and driven by the program objectives. It provides a framework for program evaluation and student assessment. Programs will need to demonstrate the process, tools, and thresholds used to measure quality. That word thresholds is the new addition to this section. The intent of this section is to centralize the program evaluation and student assessment activities and processes and create intentionality in such activities. In this section, the standards are more directive in terms of what the academic quality indicators are that must be assessed. Programs need to consider the purpose of evaluation and assessment to their overall functioning and must demonstrate accountability to their stakeholders. That's the focus of Section 2. Section 3. The next two sections are applicable to all master's students regardless of their specialty practice areas. In Section 3 is comparable to Section 2 of the 2016 standards. These are our foundational curriculum elements. The language of the foundational curriculum is organized around the principle of a unified counselor identity, as professional counselor identity as well. Programs must consider the scope of their preparation of entry-level counselors, for example, in practice areas or on-site or mental health service deliveries. Knowledge base, essential knowledge and skills necessary to function effectively as a professional counselor. The curriculum content cover constructs that every counselor in training must know regardless of their specialty practice area. This is intended to facilitate a unified professional counselor identity and facilitate effectiveness when engaging in an integrated treatment team. Ethical behavior, diversity, equity, inclusion, and critical thinking are integral to the counselor preparation and should be infused throughout the entire curriculum. Counselor preparation programs also address culturally sustaining content and strategies across the 8 foundation curriculum areas. This section is very important that you pay attention to the glossary because much of the language in Section 3 has some clear glossary definitions. Within Section 3, we do address diversity, equity, and inclusion, as I just mentioned. These constructs are interpreted through the standards. Diversity includes all aspects of intersectional and cultural group identity. An expectation that the student and the faculty reflect heterogeneity. The programs must define what that is for them. So the program has to define what diversity is for their program. We understand that every program based on geography or purpose or mission may have a variance in how they might define diversity. So now programs have to tell us how they're defining that. Moving on to Section 4, professional practice. Professional practice is, for the 2016 standards, was Section 3, now it is Section 4 in the 2024 standards. This section focuses on the application of theory and the development of counseling skills under supervision required for entry-level practice and the structure and delivery of field-based experience. There are no significant changes in this section. There are nuances throughout all elements of fieldwork across the standards, but there's no major or significant change in this section. Section 5. This section provides standards relevant to the requisite knowledge and skills for specialty areas above and beyond the foundational curriculum. Students are expected to develop and demonstrate the knowledge and skills necessary to address a wide range of issues in their specialty practice area. Section 6. Section 6 are our doctoral standards, and they're designed to prepare graduates to work as counselor educators, supervisors, researchers, and practitioners in academic and clinical settings. The significant changes in this section are, number one, removal of the required practicum. Now, this does not prevent a program for acquiring one, especially if you admit students who don't come from a graduate or come from a graduate of a CACREP accredited master's program or whose master's degree is in a related field. So programs are certainly allowed to continue to require practicum. It's no longer required in terms of the standards. The second change is the requirement of a counseling component in internship. So practicum historically for the 2016 standards was focused on the counseling component. Now that component is moved to a requirement in internship. The third change is the inclusion of a qualifying assessment or a cumulative activity or experience. Those are the three major changes for the doc section. As a reminder, although the 2024 CACREP standards delineate accreditation requirements, they do not dictate the manner in which the program may choose to meet standards. Program innovation is encouraged in meeting both the intent and the spirit of the 2024 standards. And that's really in alignment with what I shared at the beginning in our vision, mission, and core values.